Welcome to the Bitcoin Workshop, the unstoppable ultimate form of currency. I'm excited to bring to you today a full presentation on why Bitcoin has unstoppable success over the past and why that is going to continue into the future. And ultimately, what is this new currency that we have and why is it the ultimate form of currency and how this new technology plays a role in how we see money today. So we are going to first get started on who I am. A little bit about me to get started. My nickname I go in the Bitcoin crypto world is Muscle Pump. That is my nickname. You can call me Muscle or Muscle Pump. I have been in crypto for over 7 years now. It is my passion. It is my hobby. This is what I absolutely love to do. Some hobbies I have is big time investing, big time fitness person. I love philosophy reading. I love staying outdoors, working out, hiking, all that good stuff. As you see in the picture on one of my hikes here, I love to travel. And most importantly, I love being a hero, as some would say, as she would say. I love being a dad. I guess you can't quite see here, but a fun fact about me is I am 70% deaf in both ears, but that is not going to stop me from anything. And a quote that I live by is the best investment one can make is being a good person. Enough about me. Let's dive into the presentation. Before we begin, I want you to take a look at this picture right here. You might see some eyes, a nose, and a mouth. That is wonderful. Today, you might have a great understanding of money, or you might not have any understanding of money, but you have to use it. It's in our lives, right? You might not know how it works. You might not understand what causes it to function. Today, I am not going to get you lost in the details. I don't want you to get you lost in the details. I want you to see the overall picture. And I also want to see you that there might be a little bit more information behind that picture. Same thing here. You might see a face. You might see eyes, a nose, and a mouth. But what if I gave you the guidance? What if I guided you into a different direction? I said, hey, turn your head. And when you turn your head, you might see something different. This is the whole purpose of this presentation today. I am trying to guide you into seeing something a little bit different with our money today. So if you could do me a favor, during this presentation, if you hear yourself, it won't happen in my lifetime. It doesn't affect me. It's too complicated. Who cares? Things of that sort, as we go through this presentation, catch yourself and try to see the bigger picture at hand. So let's move on to the first part of the presentation. We got to unpack the big picture. This presentation is going to focus on 3 main chapters. We have the problems with money, we have the solutions of Bitcoin, and we have the opportunities provided by Bitcoin. First, we are going to go over the problems with monetary policy today. We have monopoly money. What is money? We have the weaponization of the world reserve currency, the dollar. We have BRICS forming, and we have the centralization aspect of money. So let's go over the problems with money, starting with monetary policy. What is money? What is monetary policy of tomorrow? What is the monetary policy of today? Can you tell me the interest rate today? Can you tell me how much inflation we had month over month, year over year? You can tell me that today, but what can you tell me about it tomorrow? The whole purpose of money is if you, again, what is money? Money should be that if I give my time, I give my resources in return for money, that I should be able to get my time or resources back at any given time in the future. That should be what money is, correct? Is that the case today? No, we know our money is being absolutely devalued and we don't even know what the future is going to hold. Can you tell me how much inflation we are going to see over the next year, over the next 10 years or 50 years? We can't. We have no idea what the inflation rate is going to be month over month, yet alone year over year. So if I don't know how much inflation, how much money is coming onto the market, how can I trust the money that I have today? How can I invest or how can I save money? It's simple. We do not have actual money today. We are playing with monopoly money, which we will learn about next. We do not have a form of money today. What is fractional reserve banking? Most people think when you go to the bank and you go buy a house, you go buy a car, you go pull out a loan, you are borrowing someone else's money. You're buying someone else's deposits. But that is not the case today. We have what is called fractional reserve banking. The banks only need to hold a fraction of our money, and they're able to create credit on top of that. Just to give you an example, banks only need 10% of the fraction of the money. So if you go buy a $100,000 house today, good luck finding one, but if you go buy a $100,000 house today, the bank only needs somebody else's $10,000 worth of deposits or maybe a down payment from you, and they're able to create credit on top of that. Here's the problem, is we first started going into the banking system thinking that we were borrowing somebody else's deposits, paying an interest on that, and giving that interest back to the deposits until the payment is back. But the banks now are taking all of that interest. They create money out of thin air based on a fraction of deposits, and they take all of pretty much the interest. On your deposits in your bank account, how much interest are you getting versus how much interest is the bank charging you on these loans? Where is that interest going? That interest isn't going to the deposits, it's going to the banks. All right, so we have a corrupted fractional reserve banking system that is not how it originally developed. Also, did you know, a fun fact here, did you know the Federal Reserve isn't a part of the government? Yes, we appoint Fed president, but it is an independently owned private central bank. Not only do we not know the monetary policy that they're going to push in the future, we don't even know who owns the central bank that are making these policies. It is pretty incredible. Next, I want to show you a couple videos from the Federal Reserve presidents that we appoint on what is money, or what has been going on with our money, to show you that we don't have any control over our money.
Simply flooded the system with money.
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally. So we as a central bank, we have the ability to create money digitally, and we do that by buying treasury bills or bonds or other government guaranteed securities, and that actually increases the money supply. We also print actual currency, and we distribute that through the Federal Reserve banks.
Interesting. So they can print money digitally, and that increases the money supply.
Can you characterize everything that the Fed has done this past week as essentially flooding the system with money?
Yes, exactly.
And there's no end to your ability to do that?
There is no end to our ability to do that.
Very interesting. So if there is no end in their ability to flood the system with money, and we have no vote over that, what is money? What is money? It is monopoly money. And monopoly money has a lot of value when you're playing the game of Monopoly. It also has a lot of value when you're playing a game of Monopoly that is fair. But would you want to play a game of Monopoly where there's a single player that has an unlimited supply of money? Could you ever beat them? Could you ever, again, are you going to want to play? This is the big issue with our money right now. The dollar is the world's reserve currency, and one country, America, is in control over the money printer. They can continue to borrow and print as much money as they want. And the money has value in the global economy because the dollar is the world's reserve currency. Now, again, are you going to want to play a game with someone that has an unlimited supply of money. And also, if you have an unlimited supply of money, you could simply buy anything that you may want. You could buy everything. You're eventually going to have ownership of every single thing in that game, right? This is one of the biggest issues with money today, and you're going to learn that some of the other players are getting tired of playing with someone that is manipulating the money. The money should never be manipulated by a single person ever, right? And I say they're forced to play. The dollar is the world's reserve currency, and they are forced to play. Anybody that does not participate in the dollar system, they first off need a new system to play in. They need a new settlement currency to trade with. They need a whole new back end network of plumbing where the two parties can trust and transact in. So they're forced to play because the dollar is technically the only system that it has the investment of it, especially over the past 30 years with the technology. But now it's getting to the point where technology and currency is easily produced. Well, now there could be a new game. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Also, I put that there's no changing the banker. The dollar is the world's reserve currency, and America has the money printer. Russia, China, they cannot print dollars. Nobody else can print dollars besides America. America can't really print dollars, but they can borrow that printed dollars. And as we know, we are consistently raising the debt ceiling. We're consistently getting in more and more debt, which is printing more money and flooding the system with money. All right? So there is no changing the bankers because America has the banks that prints the money. And since they have the money printer, they can use that to their advantage in many, many ways. Other countries can't print the dollar. They have to print their local currencies and sell that local currencies for the dollar. Well, America could go around why and those other countries need the dollar for trade. They can't trade in their local currencies, so they have to sell their local currencies for the dollars in order to trade with other countries to bring resources into their country. Well, what's been happening over the past couple decades is sanctions and bullying. America goes around the world and says, hey, I want you to pass this policy. I want you to allow this investment. I want you to allow this, or else we are going to not give you the dollars that your country needs. We're going to make you print more of your money for the same amount of dollars that in the past. This is why you see some countries, especially the enemies of America, that's not necessarily enemies, it's countries that are standing up for themselves and not wanting to participate in the dollar system. You see their currencies absolutely are suffering from massive inflation. And where is that inflation coming from? That inflation is coming from politics. All right? And America has that weapon because it has the world's reserve currency. It has control over that. And more so recently, we've seen some even more harder tactics happening with America and the dollar. They are now freezing assets and they're cutting countries off from accessing those payment networks. And this has been a big blow, not to the countries that it's happened to, but to America. And the reason being is these countries still have resources, they still have settlements to make. They're not just going to sit back and say, oh, we give up, we can't have access to our bank anymore. What they're going to do is say, well, if I can't play the game of Monopoly anymore, I have to create my new game. That makes sense? Everybody's been playing along great because the manipulation of the banker hasn't been that bad over the past years. It's been forced to certain areas, but overall, it's been a pretty fair game. Well, now the banker's printing a lot more money, buying a lot more things. It's out there, and people are tired of playing that game that is being manipulated. Now, they're shutting people out, saying, oh, you can't participate in our game at all. So what are they going to do? They can't play. They have to make their own game. They have to make their own underlying networks to transact settlements in order for their economy continue to function. So it's kind of backfired as of late. And I want to show you a picture from 2014, and this is a group called BRICS. It stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It is nothing new. It's been in the works for a very long time, and the headline is even from 2015, before any of this recent events happened. But they've been talking about, can BRIC countries move away from the dollar? They've been talking about de-dollarization for a very long time. They've been planning for it. They've been building a new game to get out of the dollar system because they've known it's been corrupt for a very long time. But it's not an easy process to get away from. But they are doing it, and they're getting a lot more countries on board. They actually have meetings as I'm making this video. Here are some headlines that you can see. It is now in the public light that more and more countries are getting tired of using the dollar, relying on the dollar. It is not a fair system for them to be playing. They've been talking about creating their own settlement currency between these countries that want in and backing a new currency by gold again. But gold isn't the solution. Gold might be helping fix the problem. It might help reduce the reliance on the dollar, but it's not a long-term solution. Gold has always been what we call money today, but it's not functional. But the fact is countries are tired of using or playing in a game that is not fair. They're tired of playing in a game where one country has control over the money printer. They're tired of playing in a game where one country can force other players to do things that they want to do or wreck their local economies. So, new systems are being developed. It's right in front of us. I hope you guys start to take some time and to see this and to understand it and say, hey, this is in front of us now. It's in the public view. This isn't 100 years away. The dollar is not going to be the world reserve currency my entire life. It's never going to happen in my lifetime. I always hear that. It is right in front of us, and the liquidity of the dollar being the world reserve currency is slowly losing its dominance. So here is why gold isn't the answer. Money should never be centralized. It should never be in the hand of one country, one party, one central bank, or even a group of them. What happens when somebody else comes along and doesn't do something that they like and they manipulate that money to harm the other person? That is what we have today. That is not solving anything. Money should not be centralized. It should not be controlled by a group or a single person. Also, money shouldn't be anything physical. If money is physical, such as gold, what we always seen money as, it's no longer the value of the gold that counts. It's now who has the largest military and who is able to hold that value. If I'm a smaller country with no military, a larger country, or even a smaller country with a larger military, could come in and take my value from me. Well, who has the value now? It's the one with the strongest military. A gold-backed currency or any type of commodity-backed, physical-backed currency creates an economy not where the asset has the value, but the military, whoever is strongest and whoever can hold that value, has the value. So it creates a war-based economy. It creates a war-based system because it's not about the asset, it's about who can control the asset. And also, when you have an asset, that you have to create an IOU for it, meaning we can't send gold across borders. I can't just take a bar of gold and break it off a little bit to pay for a cup of coffee. Or they can't send billions of dollars worth of gold instantly across borders for settlements. We can't use it functionally, so we have to create IOUs. Now we have to ask ourselves, who's in control of issuing those IOUs? Are they creating more IOUs than they actually have? Who's auditing these IOUs? When's the last time Fort Knox has ever been audited to tell the public or to tell the world how much gold America actually has? And who's enforcing the fairness on these auditors and on these issuers? Not the public. We can't quite see. We have to rely and rely. Money shouldn't be something that we rely on a central authority to tell us. It should be decentralized. It should be known. It should be trustless. Right? And that brings the problem with centralization. Who's holding the reserves and how are the reserves being stored securely? Again, it's not about the actual reserves. It's more important about the military and how it's stored. That creates a bad economy. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on the cost of clean energy or cheap energy versus the cost of war. Centralization, gold-backed currencies create a war-based economy. And I have some pictures for you just to kind of prove what I'm kind of talking about. Here's some recent pictures of our military taking over the weapons of mass destruction. Gold was the weapon of mass destruction. It destroyed our currency. A gold-backed currency is in direct competition with the dollar. It creates a new game, and a new game is in competition of monopoly money. All right? So let's talk a little bit about what this might mean. So the dollar is out. Now what? Now, I might have convinced you that, sure, de-dollarization is happening. You might ask yourself, okay, what happens if that comes true? I'm not saying it's going to come true. This is all speculation of what might happen or what will tend to happen as it starts to come true. As some liquidity starts to get pulled from the dollar, what might we see? Also, I don't think that it's going to be an overnight event. This isn't one thing that just happens and it's the end of the world. Too many people have watched movies, and when they see something bad happen, oh, but it's over, it's done. No. So the dollar is out. It starts to lose its reserve status. What happens? The dollar doesn't end. It's not going to go to, it's not going to be completely worthless right away. We still have an economy that is backing the dollar. We will, however, see some depreciation of our money. It's going to start to lose value. It would start to lose value of other assets or other currencies that may come out. BRICS might launch a gold-backed currency, and it absolutely may depreciate to that currency. It's also depreciating to one of the best currencies ever invented, which is Bitcoin. You look at it in Bitcoin, Bitcoin continues to go up in dollar value over time. Why is that? Is because Bitcoin cannot be printed, the supply cannot be manipulated, but the dollar is continuing to inflate. All right? And we also might see inflation. Inflation being from, there is now countries, they all wanted the dollar. They all needed it on their sheets. They all wanted it for liquidity. They no longer want the dollar. They might start trading with other countries for their currencies. So now we have more global competition. It may cost a lot more to import goods in the system. And there's going to be a lot demand, and there's not going to be enough supply domestically. All right? We do not produce. Sadly, America outsourced the majority of their manufacturing. We have to import it. We don't domestically produce enough things. We're going to have to bring some manufacturing back home, and that's going to cause some inflation. We're also going to see some increased borrowing costs. We got some higher interest rates to offset the lack of debt buyers. Nobody's going to want our debt. Nobody's going to want to buy our debt anymore. So if they're not buying our debt, we have to raise the interest rates to make people want to buy our debt, right? And we absolutely are going to lose some global influence since we don't have the world reserve currency, or we don't have the backing or the amount of players playing in our system. We now lose influence over those players. they now say, hey, we don't want to make any deals with you because we don't need your money anymore. And if you say we can't buy your money, oh, okay, we're not using your money anymore. So it's going to lose a significant amount of influence all around the world. Some ways, what happens if this starts to come? And we might already see some of this happening. We just don't might understand it yet. Another thing some experts have said that we may see if we see a de-dollarization process of countries around the world is what's called hyperinflation, where everything hyperinflates. And I'll give you a good analogy of to maybe help understand this. And again, we're playing a game of Monopoly, but let's just say you're playing a game at an arcade. And after you play in the arcade, you have a ton of tickets, right? Well, countries have a ton of dollars on hand because they need to play the game of trade, global trade. They're playing the game of Monopoly. What happens when they no longer want all those dollars? What happens when you leave the arcade and you have all these tickets that you're not going to use anymore? What do? You take it to the ticket counter and you buy anything that you can see valuable down to the last ticket, right? So if countries no longer want or need dollars or the excess of them, what are they going to do? They're going to take those dollars into an economy where they're actually accepted or where they're forced to be accepted, which is the American economy, and they're going to try to buy every single thing that they could get their hands on to take it back home with them. You can't take your tickets to a different arcade. You can't take $1 into another country and try to trade it if that country doesn't accept it as legal tender. So all of these dollars are now going to flood in back into America, and they're going to grab whatever they can get and pull it out. That's just something that some experts might have say of what might bring hyperinflation to America. Who knows? We have no idea what the future holds, but it does make sense when you break it down. So, my question to you is, if de-dollarization happens, what is your strategy to make money that is not denominated in dollars? It starts to see inflation, it starts to depreciate in value, it's starting to lose its worth. How can you make money that is not valued in dollars? Now, I don't know who's watching this video. You could be making euros, you could be making yen, you could be anywhere in the world, right? But obviously this question is for the people that is maybe saving in dollars, that is investing in dollars, or that has income in dollars, something that you should be asking yourself for the future. Now, let's go over a recap. We went over monetary policy. What is the monetary policy? What is money today? What is it worth? What is its value? We went over monopoly money, how it's just being printed into oblivion. People are forced to play, and people are forced to play with a corrupted person. It is not a fair game. We went over the weaponization of the dollar and how it's being manipulated politically. We went over countries saying, hey, we want to get away from the dollar. We want to stop playing this game. And we went over centralization. The problem with centralization, it creates a war-based economy and not a money-based economy. So let's start uncovering some of the solutions Bitcoin provides. We're going to go over the monetary policy of Bitcoin. We're going to go over the trustless, permissionless, and borderless aspects of Bitcoin, how it's censorship resistant, and how it is unconfiscatable. First, what is Bitcoin's monetary policy? It is set in stone. We have a set monetary policy for the years to come of Bitcoin. You can look at this chart and you can see exactly the inflation schedule of Bitcoin, how much is coming out, and a process. It has a different process than some may think, and I'm not going to go into extreme details. This is where I'm going to kind of be brief here, and you don't need to know exactly how it all works, how it's there, but we can verify this in the code, and we can verify this, and what we have is a verify, don't trust, verify. We can verify this. How can you verify this? This is where you need to take that time and learn some more advanced knowledge of Bitcoin if you want to go. But we have a chart here, and every 210 blocks of Bitcoin is equal to about 10 minutes per block. The reward cycle halves, and less supply of Bitcoin comes out every 4 years, or about every 210,000 blocks. So as you can see the block number, every 210, it goes the reward cycle of how much Bitcoin gets cut in half. So if I look at 2040 and say, hey, I want to hold my Bitcoin, I want to invest until 2040, how much Bitcoin is being put onto the market every 10 minutes? Well, I can see that 0.19 Bitcoin is going to come out onto the market every 10 minutes. Versus today, you can see every 10 minutes there's 6.25 Bitcoin hitting the market, causing a maybe sell pressure. All right, so I can take my investment thesis, or I can take this chart, and I can know that it is true, and I know what is going to be happening with my money in 20 years, 40 years, 80 years, etc. So we have a set monetary policy that I can plan for the future, unlike the money that we have today. Bitcoin is also trustless. We know the monetary policy of Bitcoin. It is not in the hands of one person or one country or one central bank. It is in the hands of everybody that protects the network. It is trustless, meaning that nobody can change the supply. There's going to be 21 million Bitcoin. Nobody can alter the distribution rate, meaning that the coins come out faster than what that chart shows. Nobody can change any of that. It makes it completely trustless. I can trust the policy set forth. It also means that I can trust all the transactions on the network. It is an immutable blockchain. Everything that has happened in the past, I know what has happened in the past. I can trust it because nobody can alter the data. Nobody can change. Once something happens, it's already, and it's confirmed on the network, I can trust the data. And anybody with a computer connection and some specialized hardware can mine Bitcoin and can protect the network. It is open for everybody to partake in, whether you want to mine it, whether you want to trust or validate the transactions, or you could simply transact in the network. It is trustless and welcome to everybody. And that is going to open the door for the permissionless system. It is permissionless. There's no IDs needed. There's no government form. There's no bank account. Nobody can stop you from playing around in the Bitcoin network. Transactions do not require any form of approval by authority or financial institutions. Nobody can stop you from transacting in this network. The rules of Bitcoin network are agreed upon by its users and not set by any central authority. So the authorities, some person can't tell you that you cannot interact in it. They can't tell you, they can't change the network as well. It is trustless, it is permissionless. There are over 2 billion people today without a bank account, either due to them not being available or maybe they're illegal immigrants in certain countries and so forth. But Bitcoin should be open for all. Money should be open for everybody, right? And that's what Bitcoin is. It is open to everybody. Everybody has access to financial tools that they should need, right? Bitcoin is purely permissionless. It is also censorship resistant. It is a decentralized network. And again, nobody, no central authority can prevent a transaction. If you're doing something wrong, buying something somebody doesn't like, they cannot stop that. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more on the opportunities of Bitcoin. What happens if you find yourself and governments are freezing transactions. Remember the problems with money today. America doesn't like some of the policies of certain countries, so they shut their bank accounts down or they freeze transactions. This cannot happen with Bitcoin. It is purely censorship resistant. Doesn't matter what somebody thinks, you can send Bitcoin to and from. It is borderless. It is borderless in many, many aspects. I'm going to start today with a transaction that happened a few years ago. $2 billion worth of Bitcoin moved for just 78 cents. How much would it cost to move $2 billion from one country to another? First off, it might get stopped. It might get blocked. It's probably going to take weeks to get approved, days. And it's probably going to cost you a heavy banking fee. Now, what if you were to do that with gold as a settlement currency? How much would it cost to move $2 billion from gold from one place to another? And how are you protecting it from getting stolen, right? Well, Bitcoin can move anywhere in the world across borders for extremely cheap and with confirmation in 10 minutes and faster than that, right? So Bitcoin is purely borderless, meaning that it can transact across borders. It can move across borders almost instantly for a very cheap fee. It is also borderless in another aspect of meaning I can cross borders with Bitcoin. I can walk across borders with my wealth or with Bitcoin on me, and no one has any idea that I have money on me. I can memorize my private key, and I can walk across the border, and I can have access to my money. So no one is able to censor Bitcoin. If they can't censor it, they can't block it. So if you're trying to send money to a family member that happens to be in North Korea or Russia or something, one government can't censor it. It can't say, no, you can't send money there. Bitcoin solves this equation. Big in today's world. And the last but not least, it is unconfiscatable. What this means is you could confiscate something, but it's non-confiscatable. It's unconfiscatable. And nobody can take your Bitcoin if they don't know that you have it. For the first time, we actually can own something of value with our knowledge, with our brain. If I wanted to store gold in my head, I couldn't do that. But I can store a private key in my head, and I can take it anywhere in the world, and I can have nothing with me. I can have full ownership of something of value for the first time in history. I don't need a vault. I don't need a safe. I don't need anything. I don't need a bank. I don't need a middleman. I don't even need anybody to know that I own it. Pretty crazy. We also have what is called multi-signature wallets. And what this does is it's a wallet where there's more than one owner. And you need a certain amount of owners to approve something for something to happen. So I like to break it down into on a large scale. Let's just say you have a country with 50 states, and you are trying to approve a vote on where to spend money and where to send money as a federal country. So you give each state one vote. And you need the majority vote in order for the money to be spent. So you can create a wallet with 50 owners, and you need 26 of them to approve a transaction for the Bitcoin to be sent. And we can do this, and what this creates now is a multi-signature wallet. You need 26 signatures, 26 approvals for money to be moved, Bitcoin to be moved. And what this does now is it creates a safety layer of on a large scale, whether it's for businesses or countries. And these approvals, these wallets can have as many owners as needed. You could do this on an individual basis with just 3 signers. You could do this however you want. It's very programmable. But what happens now when the largest military comes into a country and tries to steal the value of another country. Who are the signers? Who has the ability to prove something? How can they steal the value of another country's Bitcoin? It's very easy with gold. You just need to find it. You strong arm them, you kill them, and you take the gold. Or you take the resources on the land. But how do you do that with Bitcoin? How do you steal another country's Bitcoin? So now we're creating an economy where it can have value, where the strongest army is worthless. It cannot take the value of another country because you don't know how many signers there are. You don't know who is in charge of approving the majority of the wealth of that country. It's pretty incredible. Who are the signers? How are those? Where are the signers located? And you don't even know how the signers have stored their private keys. And you don't even know how many signers there are. It's pretty incredible technology that we just developed that literally de-weaponizes every military out there. It's no longer who has the strongest military. It's actually who you can actually store your wealth securely. It is purely unconfiscatable. Interesting, right? So let's recap some of the solutions. We went over the Bitcoin's monetary policy. It is set in stone. We know what it is. We know what the future holds for Bitcoin. It is trustless. We don't need to trust. We can verify for ourselves what the code says. We know exactly what we are seeing. We can go back in history and verify all the information that Bitcoin shows. It is permissionless. Nobody can tell us who can play or who can't play. Nobody can block transactions. Nobody can say, hey, you can't send money here. It is censorship resistant. It's permissionless. And it's also borderless. You can send it anywhere in the world very quickly. You can also migrate with your Bitcoin and take it with you anywhere in the world. And it is purely unconfiscatable. We have ways to to store it securely. We have ways to store it securely. That way it is purely unconfiscatable. Nobody can take it unless we give it to them, right? Next, a question that you can ask yourself. One thing that we can all agree on is technology is completely changing the way we live our lives. Don't you think it's time to change our money? Don't you think it's time to use the advancements of technology and adapt to a better form of money? Just a question that you can think about maybe later on at a different given time. So let's talk about seizing opportunities. What is the opportunities that Bitcoin brings to the world thanks to its advancements? We're going to talk about the global economy. We're going to talk about energy. We're going to talk about your opportunity or ownership, having ownership of something. We're going to talk about the hedge against fiat currencies or the dollar. We're also going to talk about today on buying Bitcoin, how to buy it, and so forth. And we're going to talk about, last but not least, maybe avoiding some scams. That's a big issue that people see today. So, the global economy. Anyone, anywhere can have a banking service. Not today. I just told you there are over 2 billion people. 1 out of every 4 people don't have a bank in the world. That is because they don't have IDs, they don't have access, all that. Well, now anybody, anyone in the world with an internet connection can have banking services and everything that Bitcoin brings quickly, fastly. No IDs needed, no government documents needed, no approvals needed. Just even if you're a good person or a bad person or you're underage, whatever it is, anyone can have access to a global financial network. Pretty incredible. Bitcoin also creates a lot of business opportunities for you to accept it for your business. Even if you want to accept your local currency, you can take anyone's Bitcoin all around the world and you can easily convert that without a minimal exchange rate, and you can get settlement almost right away. There's a lot of liquidity. It can all happen in the background. We have services today that you can accept Bitcoin and you can get actual dollars or whatever other currencies in your bank account very, very quickly. And but again, with the minimal exchange rates. So it creates a whole new economy that is merging around this technology that you can play around in. You have a lot more access to customers and so forth. Let's talk about the opportunity that Bitcoin provides to the world, and it being energy. Now, regardless of what you heard or what you know, heard in the mainstream media, or what you may understand about Bitcoin, here is my opinion and research on it. Bitcoin is going to absolutely change the way we look at energy today. So, let's talk about this a little bit. It is going to have a lot wasted energy. If you understand how the grid works today, energy is very difficult to store. So all of the energy that is produced either gets used or gets wasted. And instead of wasting that energy, we now have something that can easily be turned on and turned off. And those are Bitcoin miners. So a lot of energy companies or energy producers can hook up trailers and hook up mining software to their grid. And when that energy is not being used, they can incentivize their operations by mining Bitcoin. And once that energy is needed and the grid is demanding more energy, those miners can easily be shut off. And they can sell that energy to who's ever demanding the energy needs. So now it is going to allow these companies to lower their cost big time and allow them to scale the energy productions of the world. Also, it is a fight for cheap energy. If these energy companies are wasting it, it's not good for them. It's cheap energy for them to mine Bitcoin. Bitcoin is always going to find the cheapest energy around the world. It costs energy to mine Bitcoin. Would you want to spend top dollar, or would you rather find the cheapest option for Bitcoin? It also is going to play a big incentivization for some rural communities. Right now, a lot of rural communities have a lot of natural resources that can use for Bitcoin or energy production, like a waterfall, for example, or some rivers, for example. You can hook up devices that will extract energy from them. And what are you going to do with that energy? Some of these rural communities don't have anyone to sell it to. They can't store it and distribute it somewhere else. So what can they do? Well, they can mine Bitcoin and they can bring value to their local economies. And it's very interesting. And they basically selling their energy and scaling and protecting the Bitcoin network in the rural areas. What this is going to do, as I said, it's going to scale the infrastructure of energy production. And why is this so big? Is because we have to understand what this entails. This means what is the cost of clean energy, or what is the cost of cheap energy, versus what is the cost of war. And why war? We learned earlier that what is the game backed by? What is gold with the value of gold? There is no value of gold. There's a value of a military. It's about who can take the value is going to ultimately have the value. So if you have all the value, you have gold, you need to protect it. That is what our money over the history has produced. It produced who has the largest military, who can store the gold, has the value. Well, now with Bitcoin, that is no longer the case. We just learned you can't confiscate it. So now it becomes is what is the cost of clean, cheap energy versus what is the cost of war? And we probably can all agree that the cost of clean, cheap energy is much better world to live in than the cost of war. And this is the opportunity that Bitcoin is bringing to the world if we all accept it as money. Now, here's some difficult pictures, but these are real life pictures. What happens when you find yourself in these situations? These pictures are all pretty recent, over a lifetime, over the past few years, and they all show some of the issues with money. This is the ownership aspect, the opportunity to own something. What happens if you find yourself as a migrant? These people are everyday people. These people are lawyers, dentists, workers, service workers. These people are fleeing their town nearby because it is being in the middle of war. There's bombs being dropped. They're being invaded, and this is what these people are doing. They're leaving town with whatever they can put on their back. Now imagine if you stored your little bit of excess wealth from being a successful dentist or doctor in that town, and you find yourself in this line, and how can you carry your wealth with you to wherever you wind up? You have to carry it. Well, gold is extremely heavy, silver is extremely heavy. You might think of your bank account. Well, who says that you might even have access to your bank account? What if the country takes it or shuts it off? But what if you have Bitcoin? What if you have Bitcoin? You can carry it with you and no one knows that you have it. If all of these people get stopped and searched, there goes their gold, there goes their cash. What happens if the person next to you sees that you have something of value? You might get robbed or killed. That's not the case with Bitcoin. What happens if you find yourself in some of these other natural disasters that are coming? Climate change is real, right? So what happens if you find yourself in there? What happens if, all your cash evaporates on a fire? Well, now we have tools to have Bitcoin that's in our mind. I could take that with me wherever I wind up, wherever I go. And this is a big picture down below, the Canadian protest. The government started freezing bank accounts of those protesting. They were losing access to their money to pay bills and so forth. What happens if you find yourself on the wrong side of a government policy? They don't like what you think that is fair, and they shut down your bank account. That cannot happen with the censorship resistance of Bitcoin. You can always transact your money with Bitcoin. So what happens if you find yourselves in these situations? Shouldn't you have access to your money? Absolutely. There's another thing that I like to kind of talk about when I see these pictures. And I read a book once. It's called The Man Searching for Meaning. It's a wonderful book written about the concentration camps, life in them. And in the beginning, in the middle of the book, he finds himself in a concentration camp, and he finds himself naked, and they shaved his head. And he realizes he has absolutely nothing. And the guy next to him and everybody around them, they were successful people. They were everyday people before that. But now they absolutely have lost everything. And they do this for a reason. They do that to demoralize you and to lose hope. And in the book, you learn that a lot of the people that lived, that fought, had a reason to live. And they had hope and a belief that their wife or their kids or their loved ones or something outside of those camps was waiting for them. They had hope. They had a belief. They had something to believe in. Well, what happens today with Bitcoin? And I memorize my wealth and I find myself butt naked, stripped head. I know that I'm going to have hope that when I get out of there or wherever I find myself next, I'm going to have a stepping stone of some value that I'm going to be able to get ahead, right? I'm going to have hope and believe that I have value, and no one can take that away from me unless I give up my hope, right? This is the nature of Bitcoin. For the first time in human history, we can own something of value with our mind, with our knowledge. It is absolutely revolutionary. I want you guys to think deeply about this. Very, very important. So, no one can take your Bitcoin if they don't know you have it. Don't tell anybody. Why? You have full control and ownership of an asset. For the first time in history, we can actually own something of value and have no physical evidence of it. And we have ownership of an asset that doesn't have to be stored in the physical world. It absolutely doesn't. That's what I just said. Most people cannot comprehend the amazing feat this is, as they haven't had a need for it yet. You're absolutely right. People don't see the need for this. Why do I need this? Why would I want to own something of value that they don't understand it? They never had to need it. And you're right. I don't know who's watching this, but most of us have lived through the best years in human history, the safest years, the less volatile years. But yet, what happens if the time comes? Why shouldn't you be preparing for the inevitable? Even if it's just a small amount, you still have that hope. You still have that belief that you are carrying something of value. So let's talk about the opportunity for you as an individual. What is your hedge against the dollar? I don't know where you might be from. You might not be from America, but today everybody around the world is looking at the dollar. Everybody wants the dollar, and it's the most liquid. It is the world's reserve currency. So our investment thesis, our biases towards money should be, I want to generate dollars. However, if your net worth is 100% based in dollars, in dollar generating assets, or back to the dollar economy, meaning that your only source of income is in dollars, you live in America and you get paid in dollars, the biggest risk that you can take right now is not having a hedge if something changes. Right now, if the dollar remains the global currency, great. You're still living the greatest life that we have ever lived in human history. We still have dollar generating assets, generating, everything is good. Life is good. You can build off what we know, the history, so forth. Great. But what happens when something changes? What happens if de-dollarization starts to accelerate? What happens if something changes? What happens? What is your backup plan? You should be having some type of hedge if something were to happen. What is it? The investment thesis, mainly in past history, is gold. Financial advisors will normally say that you should have a small percentage of your portfolio in something to protect yourself in case something were to happen with fiat currencies. And that has always been gold. Have a small percentage of your portfolio in gold. Well, what I'm telling you is maybe you should split that. Maybe not the whole thing, but you should have something in Bitcoin. You should have a hedge in Bitcoin. You should have a piece of your mind, literally have some knowledge and store some wealth in your mind. Have a peace of mind that you can take your wealth with you no matter what happens, no matter what situation you find yourself in, no matter what is to come. Have some value. Whether you want to split up some of that hedge, whether you want to take more risk, maybe you're young and you don't have much to save for the future, well, maybe you want to take a little bit more risk. This is where you need to get a consultant, and they can look at your portfolio, they can look at your financial situation, and so forth. Maybe you have a lot to protect. You are generating dollars like crazy, and you want to invest in something to protect yourself. Well, no matter what the case is, everybody should have some type of hedge for the collapse of the dollar, if and when it does happen. And everybody should have some type of hedge against all fiat currencies. What should that hedge be? Well, let's talk about the best hedge possible. Regardless, or other than that we can take it with us, it's portable. We can take it wherever we want to go. It has global liquidity. I can take it to any local economy and easily trade it for local currencies. It's unconfiscatable. I know I'm going to be able to take it with me no matter what situation I find myself in. I know it's trustless, it's permissionless, it's borderless. I know it's still going to have value. I know that there's only going to be 21 million coins. I can verify all of this. I know that I'm going to be able to transact it no matter what happens in the world, no matter who's at war with each other. I know that I'm going to be able to send it. It's backed by real value. It's backed by energy output, computer algorithms. We can verify all this. It's backed by actual real value in the world. It has a limited supply. We have a set inflation schedule. It's censorship resistant. It's transparent. It's a system open for everybody. This is the best hedge against fiat currency. Why aren't you taking some? And if you're already ahead of the game. So let's talk about buying Bitcoin. Would you accept a Zimbabwe dollar, $1 trillion, $1,000,000,000? Remember how they had so much inflation that their paper money became absolutely worthless, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Well, today the rest of the world I just showed you is talking about getting out of the dollar, de-dollarization, less dependence on it. Don't be the last one holding the dollar. You wouldn't accept a Zimbabwe dollar. You wouldn't accept, others might not accept a dollar in the future. We may not know what the actual currency may be, but we do know what we have in front of us. And that is something that you are going to learn today. Regardless if you buy Bitcoin, you are still learning and understanding the knowledge of what technology is out there for the people to use to hedge yourself against. You can never say, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get out of inflation. I don't know what I should be doing. Now you have the knowledge of what to do. Regardless if you buy Bitcoin today or tomorrow or not, you now have some knowledge of what is out there, what tools are out there to take advantage of. And I say this, don't lose everything during the biggest wealth transfer of our lifetime, because this is what's happening. I truly believe wealth is going to be shifting all over the world. It's going to be an opportunity for the world. We have the haves and have-nots today. There's billions of people without functioning toilet systems, sewer systems today, but yet we have hundreds of millions of people with everything, right? And I truly believe the world is going to be balancing out. This wealth is going to be transferring. If you're one of those people that have a lot of wealth, you may start to lose it. Don't lose the wealth transfer of our lifetime. Also, there's an opportunity in that. Take advantage of it. Be early. Take a little bit of risk. Hedge yourself against what may come. Great. Let's just say I convinced you to buy Bitcoin. I've heard this many times talking with people. Great. You convinced me. I want to buy some Bitcoin. Now what? I bought Bitcoin. Cool. Well, first you need to acquire Bitcoin. What is your steps ahead? It depends on who you are, what your portfolio looks like. First, buy Bitcoin, acquire it, and then secure your keys. Figure out a system for you to either memorize it, to write it down, to create a multi-signature wallet, create a system that is going to work for you to have a peace of mind that no matter what happens, you are going to have some value, right? Create a system. And if you need help with that system, get some help. Get a consultant. Hire somebody, right? Other things that you can continue to do as you buy Bitcoin is DCA, which means dollar cost average. As Bitcoin goes up, as Bitcoin goes down, every few months, simply add to it, or maybe sell to it. Maybe you should say, look, I'm going to have 5% of my portfolio in Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes way up, it equals now 8% of your portfolio. Maybe you can sell 3% and have 5% at all times of your Bitcoin portfolio. It's just a way that you can always dollar cost average into Bitcoin. There's just different strategies. As Bitcoin goes down, you can continuously add. There's people that take a small percentage of their paycheck every single 2 weeks or every month, and they simply buy Bitcoin for their future. You could also start accepting it for your businesses. You could start generating Bitcoin by selling things that you don't need for it. You can accept it for your business. You can maybe start looking into mining it. Maybe you have a windmill in your backyard that's generating some excess energy. Maybe you can mine it with some cheap energy. You could also become part of the new economy. That's the main thing. Start utilizing it. Start allowing this new economy to merge. All right. And so you want to buy it? Well, here are some other ways to acquire Bitcoin. You want to buy it? You want to get your hands on it? Well, you could do it peer-to-peer. There's a lot of people out there that have Bitcoin that also might need cash. They might need to pay some bills, or they want to buy something. So they can easily you can give them cash and they can give you Bitcoin. Again, like I said, you can accept it for businesses, for services. You can go work online for it. There's a lot of jobs right now that pay in Bitcoin, that will pay you in Bitcoin. So you could go work and provide your time and services, and they'll give you Bitcoin for it. You can barter goods. You can sell goods for your businesses. Or you can sell things you may not need and collect Bitcoin in that aspect. The easiest way most people do, if you have money and you want to invest in Bitcoin, you're going to find an online exchange. Maybe Coinbase, Cash App, Kraken. There's a bunch of them, Gemini. There's a bunch of good ones, bad ones. But it's an online exchange that links your bank account to your Bitcoin. All right. You can funnel money from your bank account and buy Bitcoin. The problem is they are going to hold on to your Bitcoin for you. You need to withdraw that, and you need to take ownership of that. So utilize it. Do it in small amounts. Do it in chunks. Don't just do it all at once and they freeze it. It is a centralized exchange. They can absolutely freeze your assets. They can say, hey, no, you can't do this. You can't send it here. They have access to all of that. Do not trust them. It is not Bitcoin. If you have Bitcoin on Coinbase, I'm going to tell you, you do not have Bitcoin. You have an IOU. Until you control your keys, until you take that private key, you do not have ownership of anything. You have an account and an IOU. Another way you can acquire Bitcoin is by mining it. Let's just say you have an excess amount of cheap energy. You could actually buy some miners and actually start mining it and acquiring Bitcoin and help securing the network. These are just some ways that you could get your hands on Bitcoin. Now, let's talk about avoiding scams. The whole point of Bitcoin is to get rid of third parties. Sadly, today, we have all of our wealth in third parties. So we have to connect to that somehow. And those are online exchanges that I was just talking about. But get away from that right away. Do not hold your money on a third party in exchange. Unless you're holding your Bitcoin, you're not holding Bitcoin. You're holding an IOU, as I just stated. Do not trust anyone with full access to your keys. So if you have private keys, you have seed phrases, don't trust anybody. Don't trust anyone. If you trust your wife or your brother or someone, they have full access to your keys. Well, they can walk out with your Bitcoin. Create a system around it. And if you need more help with that, I have an online educational course on learning how to secure your crypto safely. Now, you need to set up a system of your own. All right. And what that means is how to secure those keys, how to secure backups, and all of that stuff. Never keep a digital trace of your private keys or seed phrases ever. If you take a picture of that and then you go log on to an app like Instagram or TikTok, and then you give that app access to all your photos, well, now they have access to your Bitcoin. You should never take a picture. You should never have a digital trace. You put it in your notes and you put it in your iCloud. Whoever has access to that iCloud now has access to your money. No one should have that. You can also set up multiple wallets to avoid scams. All right, what that means is, let's just say I have majority of my wealth in one wallet, but I want to use Bitcoin for small transactions, maybe when I'm on vacation, or whether maybe I want to buy something. I can have two wallets. You can have thousands of wallets. You can have as many wallets as you want. Set up multiple wallets. And if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. There's a lot, since it is a wild, wild west, since it's an immutable ledger, the minute you send your coins to someone, there is no one to call to get those coins back. Once you send somebody your private key, they can take your money and there's nothing that you can do. And that's the thing, not your keys, not your coins. Secure your keys, secure your private keys, secure your seed phrases. Never give them out. Never give anybody full access to them. Never send anybody coins. Nobody's going to send you them back and more. Simply use common logic and understand that it is an immutable system. There's no one to call when something goes wrong. All right, measure twice, cut once. A good way to avoid scams. So let's recap the opportunities Bitcoin brings to the world. We went over the global economy, how now everyone in the world now has access to the same financial tools as the few do today. We went over the energy, the cost of clean and cheap energy versus the cost of war, and how Bitcoin is now going to incentivize better, cheaper energy for the world, creating a more stable grid. We went over the ownership aspect of Bitcoin. Now you can actually own something that's not in the physical reality of the world. We went over the hedge against fiat. Now everybody should have some type of hedge against fiat. We went over buying Bitcoin, and we went over how common ways to avoid some scams. That's it for the seminar. I absolutely thank you for your time. You may have more questions than answers right now. I did, however, use a little bit of terminology that you may not be familiar with, like seed phrases or passphrases, or private keys, or so forth. You may have some questions, and this is great. I hope you take the time to look into Bitcoin a little bit more in depth. My goal for this presentation was to show you that you need Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is the ultimate solution, the ultimate currency, the unstoppable form of currency that is out today. It is the hedge. It is the lifeboat for us individuals as people in the world. If you need help with your further research, you can go to my website, howtocrypto.org. I also have one-on-one consulting. I have also some educational courses on Udemy. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter, or X as they call it now, and I'm also on Telegram. But I will leave you with this QR code, which is a Linktree link. You could scan the QR code and get links to all of my links that you may need. And I'm going to leave you with the quote that I live by. The best investment one can make is being a good person. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate your time. Peace.